The little cafe smelled faintly of roasted beans and baked bread, a scent that always clung to Lena's clothes long after her shift ended. Her apron was stained from a long day of serving impatient customers, and her hands ached from scrubbing tables. She sat at the corner table after closing, counting the coins and crumpled bills she had earned in tips. The total was disappointing, barely enough to cover bus fare for the week and groceries if she stretched it thin. When she folded the bills neatly into her wallet, her eyes landed on the single $5 note resting alone, crisp against the worn leather. That $5 was all she had for herself, and she wasn't sure if it would be spent on bus fare tomorrow or a loaf of bread tonight. Her phone buzzed against the wooden table. It was her best friend, Mariah, who had been insisting for weeks that Lena needed to break out of her routine. "I signed you up," the message read. Lena frowned and typed back quickly, "Signed me up for what?" A moment later, Mariah's reply came, "A blind date. Tomorrow. Don't freak out." Lena did freak out. She slammed her phone shut and pressed her palms against her forehead. The idea of a date felt like a cruel joke. She had nothing to wear except her plain work clothes and a single modest dress she had kept from her high school graduation. She couldn't afford to go out, not even to a cheap diner. A blind date meant expectations, maybe dinner, maybe drinks, luxuries that her wallet couldn't dream of supporting. She looked again at that lonely $5 bill and laughed bitterly. What was she supposed to do? Offer to split the check with a single banknote? Still, as the night dragged on, she thought about it. What if, against all odds, this was her chance? Love wasn't something money could buy, at least, she hoped it wasn't. She had spent years working, saving every penny, watching her dreams fade into survival. Maybe one evening of pretending she belonged in a different world wouldn't hurt. And maybe, just maybe, someone could see her for who she was, not for what she lacked. The next day, Lena pulled out her old dress. It was plain, a soft blue cotton that clung to her frame in ways that made her feel both shy and hopeful. She brushed her hair until it shone, slipped into worn flats, and tucked that single $5 bill into her wallet like a secret talisman. She reminded herself not to expect anything more than a polite conversation and maybe a short walk. At least then she wouldn't leave feeling like she had wasted her time. She arrived at the restaurant Mariah had sent her the name of, and her heart sank. The entrance was lit with golden chandeliers, and sleek cars lined the street outside. It was the kind of place she'd only ever seen in magazines. For a moment, she stood frozen at the door, staring at her reflection in the glass. Her dress looked too simple, her shoes too cheap, her nerves too obvious. A part of her wanted to turn back, to run to the bus stop and never mention this night again. But she thought of her friend's voice telling her she deserved a chance, and she forced herself to step inside. The hostess smiled politely, though her eyes lingered on Lena's attire with the faintest hint of judgment. Lena swallowed her shame and gave the name Mariah had provided. She was led to a table near the window, where a man already sat waiting. He looked ordinary at first glance, dark hair, sharp features, dressed neatly in a blazer and open-collared shirt. But there was something about his posture, calm and confident, that made Lena instantly self-conscious. He stood when she arrived, offering his hand with a smile that reached his eyes. "You must be Lena," he said warmly. She nodded, her voice catching. "Yes, sorry if I'm late." "You're right on time," he replied, pulling out her chair. She sat, clutching her wallet as if it could anchor her. The $5 bill inside seemed to burn against her palm. She had no idea how the night would go, but one thing was certain, she couldn't let him know just how little she had brought with her. Lena tried to keep her breathing steady as she unfolded the napkin on her lap. The restaurant gleamed with white tablecloths and flickering candles, the kind of place she had never dared step into before. Every detail screamed of wealth, the polished silverware, the wine glasses that sparkled under soft chandeliers, even the quiet hum of live piano music in the background. She wanted to disappear into the seat cushion, but across from her, the man she'd just met seemed at ease, as if this was the most natural place in the world. "I'm Ethan," he said, resting his elbows lightly on the table. "I hope this isn't too intimidating. Blind dates can be a bit unnerving." "That's one way to put it," Lena admitted, forcing a laugh. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her mind screaming at her to keep calm. Every second in this lavish place reminded her of the single $5 bill hidden in her wallet. If the menu prices matched the decor, that bill wouldn't even cover a tip. A waiter approached, holding menus bound in leather. Lena accepted hers with a grateful smile, though her heart dropped the moment she opened it. The cheapest dish was more than 3 times what she had in her wallet. Her throat tightened. What was she supposed to do? Order nothing? Pretend she wasn't hungry? Ethan noticed her hesitation. You don't have to overthink it, he said gently, as though he could read her mind. Order whatever you like. She managed a smile, but her eyes darted back to the list of dishes she couldn't possibly afford. Actually, I'm not very hungry. Maybe just tea, she said softly, hoping her voice didn't betray her shame. Tea. His brows lifted slightly in surprise, then his expression softened. If that's what you'd like. The waiter returned, and Ethan ordered a full meal with ease, then turned to her. Lena's cheeks burned as she whispered, "A cup of tea, please." When the waiter left, silence stretched between them, though Ethan seemed more curious than critical. "So," he said, leaning forward, "tell me about yourself. What do you do?" Lena's instinct was to downplay everything. "I work at a cafe." "Nothing exciting," she said quickly, fiddling with the corner of her napkin. "Nothing exciting," Ethan chuckled. "I think there's something admirable about someone who works hard. What's your favorite part about it?" She blinked, caught off guard. Most people she met dismissed her job entirely, assuming it was temporary or unworthy of respect. "Well, I guess it's the regulars," she admitted after a pause. "Some of them come every morning, and I know their orders by heart. It feels good when they smile, like I made their day easier." Ethan's smile widened. "That's not nothing. That's meaningful." Lena felt her chest tighten. He was listening, really listening, in a way that felt unfamiliar. But the guilt of her situation pressed on her. She was sitting across from a man who radiated confidence, who fit perfectly into this elegant world, and here she was hiding the fact that she had come with only $5. When the tea arrived, Lena wrapped her hands around the warm cup, letting the steam fog her thoughts. Ethan cut into his meal and asked her about books, music, and dreams she once had as a child. Slowly, she found herself relaxing. His laugh was genuine, his eyes kind. He didn't seem to notice her plain dress or worn shoes. He wasn't mocking her for sipping tea while he dined. At one point, she hesitated, then blurted, "Do you go on blind dates often?" He shook his head. "Rarely. Most people I meet are complicated." "I was hoping this would be different." "Different how?" she asked cautiously. "Someone honest. Someone real." The words lingered in the air, and Lena's heart fluttered with both fear and hope. She wanted to believe him, but her secret gnawed at her. What would he think if he knew she couldn't even afford the cheapest appetizer on the menu? That her tea was a desperate cover for the emptiness of her wallet? When the waiter cleared the plates, Lena's pulse quickened. She slipped her hand into her bag, brushing her fingertips against the folded $5 bill. It was laughable compared to the check she knew was coming, but she couldn't bear to sit there empty-handed. As the bill landed discreetly on the table, Ethan reached for it, but Lena spoke quickly, her voice trembling. "Wait, I want to contribute. Please, at least let me pay for my tea." She pulled out the $5 note, laying it carefully on the edge of the bill. For a moment, she couldn't bring herself to look up. When she finally did, Ethan wasn't laughing or frowning. He was staring at the bill, then at her, with a look of something she couldn't quite place, something closer to awe than amusement. Ethan's gaze lingered on the $5 bill as though it held a secret weight only he could feel. The soft golden glow of the restaurant's lights reflected against the edges of the worn paper, highlighting every crease and fold. Lena's hand trembled slightly as she pulled it back, her cheeks flushing red with embarrassment. I know it's not much," she whispered, eyes darting to the tablecloth. "But it's only fair. I should at least pay for what I ordered." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Most women he had met would have assumed he would cover everything without question. Some didn't even bring wallets, confident that his money would stretch to cover whatever extravagance they desired. Yet here sat a young woman who ordered only tea and still insisted on paying for it. A lump formed in his throat as he finally looked up, his voice soft but steady. "You don't know what that means to me." Lena blinked, startled. "It's just $5, she said, almost apologetically. "No," Ethan said, shaking his head. "It's honesty. It's sincerity. He trailed off, searching for words he rarely used. "It's rare." Her brows furrowed. She wasn't sure if he was teasing her or genuinely touched. To her, that crumpled bill was all she had left. To him, it was apparently something more. The silence stretched again, and Lena shifted in her seat, suddenly nervous. "You don't have to make a big deal out of it," she muttered. "I'm not making a big deal," he said firmly, leaning forward. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who only cared about what they could get from me. Money, status, connections, you name it. Do you know how many times I've been on dates where the first question was what kind of car I drove? She tilted her head, uncertain. You must live in a very different world than I do. A rueful smile touched his lips. You could say that. He paused, then decided to step out of the shadows he had carefully built around himself. The truth is, Lena, I'm not just some ordinary guy working in an office. I own a few companies. Her eyes widened slightly. She tried to laugh it off. A few companies. Like a small business. His lips curved into something halfway between amusement and regret. Not exactly small. I'm a billionaire, Lena. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lena froze, her mind blank. She blinked once, then again, certain she had misheard. What? A billionaire, he repeated gently. I don't say it often, because people treat me differently the moment they know. But I wanted you to hear it from me. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely think. A billionaire, she thought back to the way he carried himself, the ease with which he ordered, his calm confidence. It all made sense now, though she could hardly believe it. Why didn't you say anything before? She asked, her voice thin. Because I wanted to see who you were without that knowledge hanging between us. I wanted to know if you'd still be kind, still be real, if you thought I was just a man at a table. She stared down at her tea, the steam now gone, the cup cold. So this was some kind of test. No, Ethan said quickly, reaching across the table, his hand hovering just above hers. It wasn't a test. It was a hope. I hoped to find someone like you. Her throat tightened. She didn't know whether to feel honored or hurt. You're telling me you're a billionaire, and I'm sitting here with $5 in my wallet. Do you have any idea how humiliating this feels? His eyes softened. Lena, that $5 means more to me than any diamond necklace someone could have flaunted in front of me. You didn't come here expecting me to take care of you. You came with what you had, and you gave it honestly. That's priceless. Her chest ached with a mixture of disbelief and something warmer, something she didn't dare name. She wanted to protest, to say that $5 was nothing, but the way he looked at her made her pause. There was no mockery in his eyes, no pity, only admiration. For the first time all evening, Lena felt her shoulders relax. Maybe he really did mean it. Maybe he wasn't here to judge her but to see her. And maybe, just maybe, this night would change more than just the way she saw him. It might change the way she saw herself. The night air was cool as they stepped out of the restaurant, the street alive with the glow of passing headlights and the faint hum of traffic. Lena hugged her coat tighter around herself, her mind still reeling from Ethan's revelation. A billionaire. The word felt foreign on her tongue, heavy in her chest. She had imagined him as confident, maybe well off, but never in her wildest dreams had she thought she was sitting across from a man whose name could probably be found in business magazines. Do you need a ride home? He asked gently, walking beside her with his hands in his pockets. She shook her head quickly. No, I'll take the bus. The bus? His brows furrowed. At this hour? Yes, she said firmly, though her voice quivered. It's fine, I do it every night. Ethan studied her for a moment, and then, without argument, he nodded. Then I'll walk you to the stop. Lena opened her mouth to protest, but something in his tone silenced her. They walked together through the city streets, their footsteps echoing in rhythm. Despite the luxury he could so easily summon, chauffeurs, limousines, private cars, he didn't seem uncomfortable walking beside her, past the chipped sidewalks and dimly lit storefronts. He asked about her life, her mother, the cafe where she worked. And he listened, truly listened, as though every detail mattered. When they reached the bus stop, Lena felt her chest tighten. A part of her still feared this was some kind of game, that he would laugh at the simplicity of her world once he saw it for himself. But Ethan simply sat beside her on the cold metal bench, his expensive jacket catching the glow of the flickering street lamp. This is where I wait every night, Lena said softly, staring down the empty street. Sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes longer. Ethan leaned back, a small smile on his lips. Then tonight, I'll wait with you. She turned her head sharply, surprised. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted. His gaze met hers, steady and warm. You've let me into your world, Lena. It's only fair I see it for what it is, not from the window of a passing car. The words sank deep, melting the last of her defenses. She wanted to believe him, and maybe for the first time, she truly did. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the city wrapping around them, the hiss of tires on wet pavement, the distant honk of a horn, the shuffle of a passerby. Finally, the bus rumbled into view, its headlights bright against the night. Lena stood, clutching her bag, expecting Ethan to politely excuse himself. Instead, he stood as well and followed her onto the bus. She blinked in disbelief as he dropped a bill into the fare box, the driver giving him a curious look. Ethan's tailored blazer looked out of place against the cracked vinyl seats and faint smell of gasoline, but he didn't flinch. He slid into the seat beside her as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "You didn't have to. I told you," he said with a smile, cutting her off. "I want to." The bus rattled down the street, carrying them past graffiti-marked walls and shuttered shops. Lena's heart swelled unexpectedly. She had spent so many nights alone on this bus, her thoughts heavy with exhaustion and worry. Tonight, for the first time, she wasn't alone. When they reached her stop, Ethan followed her out, walking her the last few blocks to the small apartment building she shared with her mother. The building was old, its paint peeling, but the lights from the windows gave it a humble warmth. "This is me," Lena said quietly, stopping at the gate. She expected him to hesitate, to step back into his world of polished marble and glittering glass. Instead, he smiled gently. "Thank you for showing me," he said. His eyes softened, and he reached into his pocket. For a moment, Lena's breath caught. She half feared he would hand her money, some gesture that would make her feel small. But instead, he pulled out a single flower, its stem slightly bent from being carried in his jacket. He held it out to her. "It's not much," Ethan said, his voice low, "but it's all I can give you that comes close to what you gave me tonight. You offered me honesty. That's worth more than anything money can buy." Tears stung Lena's eyes as she accepted the flower, her fingers brushing his. In that moment, the distance between their worlds seemed to fade. He wasn't a billionaire, and she wasn't just a poor girl with $5 in her wallet. They were simply two people who had found something real in each other, a truth untouched by wealth or poverty. As Ethan walked away into the night, promising to see her again, Lena looked down at the flower in her hand. For the first time in a long while, she let herself believe in something bigger than struggle. She believed in love, the kind that could change lives.